So how do we kick this off? I guess it's kicked off. There we go.
Yeah, this is the Work Podcast. How you guys doing?
You do it really well.
Yeah.
Fantastic, man. Thank you guys for having us.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have new blood in the room, I guess. Do you want to
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
new blood.
introduce yourself?
Uh,
Yeah.
Sure. Hi, my name is Low.bō. I'm an artist and producer from Baltimore, currently based in Uptown, Washington Heights. But I guess my genre is more so like alternative R&B. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I don't really know what else to say for real.
And I'm Julian. What's good, guys? Appreciate you guys having us. Wait, nah, fuck. Can I start that over again? I said appreciate you guys having us again.
Oh, good. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm Julian. 1/3 of Other Side, NYC. Shout out to my guys Mike and Gutty. Manager, A&R. Been doing this stuff for I guess like 3-4 years at this point. Been doing kind of serious internships ever since like 2018. So just grateful to be evolving, learning every year, and yeah, I'm blessed, man.
Awesome.
Excited to get into it, man. Let's get me canceled today.
I mean, I know we have a couple of topics to talk about, but I think maybe one that we could segue to is that video that we saw, which
Yeah.
the discussion of manager-artist relationships, what that looks like from a business perspective, considering like where you guys are at together, like what that looks like, and yes, your thoughts and opinions on that. That sentiment that they had in that video of like, well, maybe we should go half and half. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I'll let you go first because I definitely have
I was
thoughts.
gonna say you
but-
should go first.
Okay, let me. So I think it all depends on where the artist is at in their career, and obviously, I think it has a little bit to do with where the manager is in their career too. But like, as far as with like us and Low.bō, as far as on the other side, like I going 50-50, I don't think ever like would have made sense for us. Just like because when we started working together, you had like probably like 5 songs out. Because you had Ricochet out, you had My Dogs, you had Down on My Luck, you had Venus.
Yeah, and then
That
was it. It was like
yeah, and then we did Circa.
right.
Yeah, so it also like credit to Low.bō, someone who is mostly self-produced, records himself. It's not someone like you got to take to the studio. He records like in his house.
Yeah.
So which is pretty fantastic for overhead, and obviously you're a leader what you do, but I think like it wouldn't there's an exact scenario I was just thinking of where I think like a 50-50 partnership could make sense, where it's like, let's say I'm on TikTok and I find like, you can call her Artist X. Let's call her Artist X, and she's got incredible voice. Opened up my phone like, what the fuck, this shit is incredible. She has like, say 1,000 followers, no music out, and she just has a great voice, and she lives in London. So I get on the phone with her and see what she's got going on, and then I realize that she doesn't know how to write music. She doesn't have access to a studio. She like hasn't made music before. Period. She just has an incredible voice, and let's say some of the covers are starting to get attention. There's some A&R starting to reach out or whatever, but it's really just because I think she has an incredible voice. In that case, I think something like a 50-50 could make sense, because if you're really at square zero, and that would also probably be a situation where we would be investing on our side, where it's like, somebody's got to pay for flights. Somebody's got to pay for studio time. Somebody's got to get you in with every single writer, producers, getting all that type of stuff. Let's go to LA. Let's do a bunch of sessions at Prescription. Let's stuff like that. Then I think you might have a point for really like thinking about it in a totally different way, because I think like so much of this stuff, especially on the label side, is really like, it's a little bit different on the management side, but I would say on the label side is really like Shark Tank. Like, I don't watch Shark Tank like on a regular basis. Like, I've seen it enough. I've seen it enough. Like,
I get it.
Exactly. Like, I get the concept, and if you watch a few episodes, you kind of get like what investors are good at. What like the Lori woman, like she does QVC. So if you have a product that can be sold on an infomercial,
Yeah, she'll
When you
jump
wake
on
up
it.
at 3 a.m. on your couch, high as hell, you got chips all over you, and
Yeah.
you seen someone with like a fucking mop, just like talking about their magic mop.
Yeah.
Lori might have put that in play. She can put that in play for you. You know,
yeah.
she might not be the right person to, you know, sell a bunch of bottled wine, like, I don't know, in like a fucking sippy cup or something in like department stores. She might not be the person for that. But for those type of products, that's the perfect type thing, you know, like it also kind of, and I think it's a pretty one-to-one comparison nowadays because, you know, there's certain labels that if you have a song that's like flying on TikTok and you want to do like a one-off, there's a few companies that are really good at doing shit like that. There's also companies that's just not their business model. That's not what they do. That's not what their
Yep.
staff is, you know, like that's not their expertise. So I think on the manager side, like there's certain types of managers where something like that could make more sense depending on where the artist is at and how many resources that they have to, and like if they're even investing to.
Yeah.
Yeah, good points.
Yeah, I was gonna say you kind of. I agree with a lot that you were saying.
Cooking?
Yeah, you cooking.
Cooking.
I'm not gonna lie, you definitely cooking. I guess coming from the artist perspective, for me, the way that I've always kind of viewed it is just that, like, at the end of the day, like, it's business. You have to know what you're doing. So I think of it like, okay, even on a just individual aspect, I think of it like labels. Like, if you sign to a label, the more that you have as leverage, the more that you can negotiate what you kind of want.
Mhm.
So, like, for me, when I started doing music, I wasn't really waiting on anyone to do anything for me. Like, I was, even though I didn't have like a crazy setup or nothing like that, I was still recording in my house, working like 12-hour shifts, but I was still finding time to go and record. I made all my cover arts. I still do to this day. Because I did photography. I went to school for photography and film. Like, I got my degree in it and all that. And I also was doing like video work back when I lived in Maryland. So I had a lot of experience shooting videos, editing videos. Like, I know how to use Premiere. I know how to use Photoshop. I make my cover arts on my phone, if I'm being real. So I think being so self-sufficient for so long, I didn't really go on my way like having to ask people like, oh, can you do whoop de whoop de whoop for me? Because if I could do it myself, then I would. But I'm not stuck in the mindset of like, oh, everything has to just fall on me. Like, if there's somebody better than me, I'm gonna go to them and be like, yo, can you do this for me? If it makes sense to do so. So with that being said, it kind of feeds off what Julian was talking about, like, you know, if you're someone that doesn't write, that doesn't record, that doesn't do anything for themselves without someone having to basically push your back to do so, then I think it makes more sense to do a 50-50 type of like situation.
Mhm.
But if you already have stuff going on, you already building some sort of momentum on your own. I think, and this is something I had to unlearn myself, was that, oh, I need a manager for things to make sense. A lot of times artists don't have managers until they already have stuff going on for themselves first. So it doesn't make sense for you to go out your way. You have no motion, you have nothing really built on yourself. A manager can only work with what you have. And if you have nothing, then they just sit there, they have to make opportunities for you. So knowing that, like, yeah, I'm not like some major artist or nothing like that, I still had stuff going on. Like, my second song in like 2 weeks had 20,000 streams. So I had people reaching out to me and stuff like that. But the way that I view it too is like, besides it just being business is people. Like, I don't want to just work with you just because you're good. Like, there's a lot of talented people that are not good people. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
So
I was just saying the other day, like, if I make it to heaven, like, God, or wherever the promised land is, if there's a promised land, like, can I go to Rolling Loud in hell? Like, Rolling Loud in hell has got it. It's like, it's right there. Like, is James Brown, R. Kelly, fucking Jitty. It's got to be a great show. Like, this is I would say actually most people are probably bad.
yeah.
So you want to go there, we could get really dark. Most people are probably bad.
We don't gotta go that. We don't
Nah,
gotta
nah.
fair enough. But yeah, I mean, with just that though, like, I think the whole people thing is very important because it's like friendships. These are people that I'm gonna build connections with.
So that's really interesting because mentioning the people part, right? Like, because you both talked about a level of development, right? The artist out in London required a lot of development. So like that's a huge investment that's non-monetary,
Mhm.
right? So like that makes sense because it's like, okay, we're literally gonna build this up together. So it is like a 50-50 or something, right?
We're founding partners in the business.
Exactly, to your point. Yeah, connecting that to the business point that you had. But it's interesting because you developed yourself to a point that usually anyone that develops something to a point that they start making mistakes is actually when they learn to willing to partner with someone, right? So like my question is, what connected you two that ended up working other than maybe you like each other as people?
I'll
Yeah,
tell you
yeah.
what it was.
Like, what was it?
Yeah, what was it? Tell
Yeah,
me.
he's like, wait a
What was
second.
it? I want to see. I want to hear what you say.
So, from my perspective, this is kind of what happened. So I had dropped my fourth song called Down on My Luck. And I had just got my first playlist like ever, like first editorial playlist. It was like crazy. And Julianne hit me up. Like at this point, there was like a few like business people hitting me up telling like, yeah, do you have a manager? Whatever the case may be. I was like, no, not really. Just those like kind of conversations. And then Julian hit me up and was like, yeah, man, I like Venus. And I'm like, okay. I was like, all right. So we was just chatting or whatever. And he was like, yeah, like, let's get on a call. He didn't say nothing about like a management or assigning me or nothing like that. He was just like, yo, let's get on a call. Let's chat. So we got on a call. At first it's just the formals like, hey, I'm Will or Low.bō or whatever. He's like, I'm Julien. And we just started talking about bullshit for like an hour and a half. And like ever since then, like we kept having more conversations. I didn't even meet him yet. I was still living in Jersey. So he was in Brooklyn. I'm like, I'm not driving to New York anytime soon. So we were just a lot of times like texting for the most part, but he was doing little stuff on the back end that I didn't know he was doing. So I would see like my songs in like these little independent, like curated playlists at the time. And I was like, oh, word, like that's stuff. We'll do.
Wait, so you were doing this and you had no idea?
Had no idea. He was just doing it just off the strength of just like, just really helping.
Mother.
I was really just doing it because the funny thing is back then, like I remember that call, like I was still, I was like, that was probably like my second or third year at 300 because I was there doing A&R stuff from like, because I was an intern during COVID. And then I just like figured out how to stick around on research until like eventually signing stuff and whatever. And I was there till September. So I remember taking that call from my desk. And like Venus was just a song that I couldn't get out of my head because Down on My Luck, like I was fucking with that song, but there's something about the songwriting in Venus and the storytelling in it where I was just like, there's something here. Like I didn't know what it was. It was the je ne sais quoi. And I just couldn't I couldn't get it out of my head. And it was something like also that time was I wasn't that happy at that time, I would say. Like I didn't think I was unhappy, but compared to like the last few years, I definitely last like I guess like what, year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah.
Like I definitely wasn't that happy. Like I definitely had a lot of shit going on at work. Like I remember that was when I was putting together like the posthumous Lil Keat album. So I was having to do the agreements, credits, like all that stuff. So I was just like that was really my day to day. And it was I think sometimes you just meet someone and you just kind of have some chemistry with them just as a person, and I think like that's important. And for me too, like, to be honest, the playlist I was submitting to, like, that wasn't like a big like task for me.
Right.
I was just like, yeah, yo, I fuck with this song, I'll send it to so and so, I fuck with this song, I'll send it to Brick for the Daily Chiefers, I'll send it to Sam for Early Rising,
That's what it was. Early Rising.
Shout out to Early Rising, actually.
Yeah, Early Rising was doing a lot.
They have good taste. I mean, I think that's part of it, like, especially like for us who've been like kind of more on the business side than the creative side, a lot of the stuff that we do doesn't have like a monetary outcome.
Yeah.
Right. So like going back to the whole 50-50 point is one thing to say, okay, I deserve 50%. But I remember from my days as a manager, my days in the A&R, just a person in the music industry, a lot of stuff, if you do money doesn't come out on the other side.
Right.
And I think that's why it's so good when you start off these relationships of the ideas like, well, is this person actually helping me? And if they can help me in ways that might not generate money, but can help me get exposure or like the right people know who I am, maybe eventually the ball is going to get rolling to the point that is actually going to make revenue.
No facts. Because even with us, like when the way that he became my manager officially, we were just on the phone and I was like, bro, like just joking. I was like, yo, like at this point, you might as well just be my manager. And he was like, well, would you want me to? And I didn't expect him to say that, but I was like, I got to meet you in person, whatever the case may be. So we had met up in Manhattan. They told me to get Wagyu chopped cheese. That junk crazy.
Little Spanish octopus.
So yeah, that's what was fire. But we all
Shout out to Mike. Shout out Mike. Mike knew that spot.
yeah. But we all sat down. They asked me what I was looking for. And then I asked them the same question. I asked them, what are they looking for? They said they wanted someone that was like hardworking, consistent, and willing to learn. And I told them I want somebody that's going to like put their best foot forward for me, give me patience, and also like communicate. Cause if you can't communicate with who you're working with, what's the point? So we didn't have a contract for a year. And then after like I had dropped like my first EP or whatever. And we kind of just learned from what was good and what we could have done better. They had like presented the contract to me. All the terms were cool. They put 20%. And I was like, yeah, like this is smooth. And my mom, she reads contracts. So I always send her my contracts before I even
So smart.
yeah, shout out my mom, bruh. But I always send her every contract I get before I even like I'll read it, send it to her, and then I'll read it again. And then like we'll have conversations. But like honestly, the contract was smooth. There was nothing for me to go back and be like, oh, this is bad.
So also putting best foot forward. I love, by the way, that you said, let's just say you sent it to someone to confirm after you read the agreement, and then when you took it back to read it again,
Yeah.
to your point of learning. Just wanted to highlight that. That's simple genius.
Yeah, it's just
And yeah,
I don't know. It's just my mom, even though she's not like in the music industry or nothing, she's like 60 something years old. So she's heard about all these like, like Temptations, Ohio Players, a lot of artists that would get, essentially fucked because they're not going over the contract or they're putting like their life in somebody else's hands. And for me, I don't want anyone to control whatever I do. Whatever decision I make, whether it's good or bad, should fall on me because at the end of the day, that's my choice. That's what I decided to do. But especially on legal terminologies, I don't play about no money. Sure as hell don't play about my life. So I'm gonna read whatever I need to read. If I got questions, I'm gonna ask. Anything I that don't sit right with me, I'm pointing out and be like, can we renegotiate this or whatever the case may be? It doesn't matter the time because at the end of the day, like once your name is on paper, that's that. So you have to be smart. It's like it's 20% art, 80% business for the most part, and that's in every aspect of it, like from visuals to just meeting people to the actual music making of stuff, like splits and royalties and all that stuff. Like it's something that you can either force yourself to learn or leave it to somebody else. But that also goes back to the 50-50. If you're not willing to learn, then you're going to give up more because you're not willing to do more.
I will say too, like from a manager perspective, like the first time that we ever I think the first one or two artists, especially the first artist that we ever signed to Other Side as first for management, like back in I want to say like 2021. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing as far as a contract. Like we wanted to, do paperwork, stuff like that. But as far as like the agreement we were doing, like we did like 20%, whatever. But we also didn't really understand like all the terms as far as in a contract. Like we had to, I think one thing that's good for managers to do, or just honestly for anybody who works in music, but get some like good friends who are lawyers who can really like help you like build out your contracts and like what makes sense for you. Like get you a good like manager contract template that you can amend accordingly. Or if you have a deal that comes your way, be like, okay, hit up so and so, I'll get it across the line. We have two great lawyers that we work with for the most part with Other Side as far as shout out to my guy Shalik Smith Esquire, fantastic lawyer, and Josh Hefner, fantastic lawyer as well. So like I feel like too, I'm also just always gonna be the type of person like explain this to me like I'm 5 years old, but just like respectfully, if I don't like understand it, like there's gonna be shit I'll be like, what the fuck does this say? Like genuinely, I have no clue what the fuck this says, and the little label terminology that they throw in there, So it's like I think also like being able to know people in that field too is like it's like duh, but like that was a big help to us on the management side as well, so that when I think honestly before. I'm trying to think when we like kind of revamped our management contracts, but I know like it was before I think after we met you, but it kind of just worked at a perfect time, you know.
I have a question. Like speaking about like contracts, like a common thing, especially like my notable thing. I'm always like, I'm better than before, but I'm always like 5 years too early.
Mhm.
Like I'll like an artist, and then that person will, get a plaque, huge names, but it's always like 5 years early, right? That happens to me way too many times, right?
Mhm.
And oftentimes I have a person in mind right now who is like literally a global hit right now. When I met them, they had a manager, but the manager also had a label, and they were
Mhm.
also signed to their label. So I'm curious what you all think about the whole concept of a manager also having a label, like not like a traditional like production deal, but like in the sense of like, no, you're on my label, and like those are kind of like mixed mashed together because I see that a lot, and I'm curious what your thoughts on it.
I I think honestly, it's all circumstantial. I think it's about choice. It all boils down to just choice. Nobody's putting a gun to your head to sign this or to accept that or whatever the case may be. Like a lot of times I feel like people take these offers and stuff like that because that's what's in front of them, or they feel like they don't have a choice. You know what I mean? But I feel like if you're willing to just be okay with like no, like saying no and understanding that redirection isn't always just a bad thing. It can avoid a lot of situations that may not be the most ideal, especially like like a lot of early situations. Like I'm not gonna say no names or nothing. I have a homeboy who very talented rapper, but he signed essentially a 360 because
How long ago?
this is like recent. He's
Oh,
like
that's
very new, like it's very underground type shit. Like this is just like a really good homie of mine. But he signed his shit because he's in a lot of debt, like college
oof.
debt. So he was just kind of like, yo, like this like kicking my ass. Like I'm living with my parents. This is money in front of my face.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just a lot of that comes like,
You're gonna meet a lot more debt now.
yeah, but yeah, it's all like it comes down to just choice, like just knowing what's in front of you and being like, I don't have to do this just because it's right there right now.
So when you talk about choice, that's a really interesting first thing to talk about because like the definition of the term independence is up in the air in terms of music.
Mhm.
So many people, industry, rags and business and artists, everyone's like debating what does independence mean. But I think the simple definition is choice, right? You
Yeah,
have more of it, less of it, or none. Um, and then what's interesting is even companies now, labels, distributors, whatever it is that say that they're independent, but are they really?
No.
Because so to your question about manager that has a label, right? Then there's skewed incentives,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Then there's an independent label or independent distributor or whatever the hell it is. But then it's owned by something that's not independent. So there's other incentives there, right? That
Mhm.
then trickle down to everyone that's in that house, right?
yeah.
And then I think the other thing that's really interesting is like setting boundaries. The one question I was going to ask is like, and it's really interesting, I think, for people listening to this to hear you talk about that more. I think like to know that you have a choice, but I think there's also mental to also know that this is a long game, right?
Yeah.
Like even creatively when you're creating, right? You kind of you don't know what's around the next corner because you think you're hitting the best thing you've ever made,
Mhm.
and then you surprise yourself in X amount of time, and then you hit another corner,
Right.
and then you think you're there again. You're like, oh shit, I don't know, and then you're gonna hit another corner. Going back to your concepts of development, like you hit enough development or you make enough mistakes and develop past that, you realize there is a long game. And I think that it's almost like most people realizing it creatively, but they don't. You hearing you both talk about this, it's just interesting. Like they don't realize that that also happens on the business side, right?
Right.
Mhm.
I don't know if that resonates with you or anything, because like I think you talking that out even more would be really helpful for people to hear.
No, it
Yeah.
100% resonates because everything that looks good isn't good for you like in most cases. You know what I'm saying? Like someone could offer me like, okay, let's say for example, I was like only a year into this, you know what I'm saying? I'm very, very new. Maybe I have a song that's kind of going crazy on TikTok right now. You have a lot of people throwing you stuff
Mm-hmm.
saying, oh, we can throw you, I don't know, I'll say random numbers. Like if somebody's offering you a mill, someone's offering you 700,000, someone's offering you 500,000, whatever the case may be. You're your mind is going to gravitate towards the biggest amount. But sometimes you get so blinded by the amount of money that's in front of your face
Mhm.
that you're not thinking about how you're going to get that money back, because it's a loan. It's not like they giving this to you and
Yeah.
you're not paying it back. Like even in distribution deals, like yeah, you're not signing your masters away, but you still got to recoup, and
Mhm.
they still going to get their money afterward you recoup. You may have a little percentage, the way you negotiate it. So it's really just like like not just being like, I don't even want to say like being stoic, but just more so just like take a breath. You know what I'm saying? Because I've made the same mistake, like with the offers that we were getting and stuff like that. Like a lot of stuff was like, this is some nice stuff. But it was just like I'm grateful for like Julian and my other manager, Mike, because they're so like Julian is like in the most positive way a pessimist, because he'll be like we'll have an offer, right?
It's usually called a realist, but yeah.
Yeah, realist, pessimist, one of the two, bro. But
Because I'm like optimistic as a whole. Like I
right,
think I'm like glass half full about life as a whole, but I'm definitely I definitely am like the first to question people's intentions off rip.
yeah,
Like, oh, they're only meeting us because of this.
Mhm.
yeah.
Like, yeah, they're not, yeah, shit like that.
But it works well though, because even in the way that I talk to people, I talk the same way I would talk to like my friends to like these type of situations. Cause it's like, to be honest, if I can't talk to you in a way that feels comfortable, if I feel like I have to put on a facade or something that isn't really me,
Mhm.
I don't feel like we need to have any business doing business. Because when we were talking, and this is like we were talking about earlier before like podcasts and stuff, I was talking about how they told me when you hit 100,000 like monthlies, people are going to come out of nowhere. So I had made a post, literally 100,000. I had like 5 people out of nowhere hit me up talking about something. Yeah, so like, what's your situation? Are you like signed? Are you woo woo? Like, and we had just like finished out our distribution thing, so we're like, no. So we're taking calls and stuff like that, and we had like crazy looks just coming out of nowhere. It was like, yeah, really liking what you've been doing, pulling songs that I don't even listen to anymore. And they're like, yeah, we just kind of want to figure out, what can we do for you, what the case may be. And, we have this, we have that, rah, 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 rah. But for me, I always talk about like, it's not really about the numbers. It's more so just about like the effort that's shown and basically what it's going to say in black and white. Because you could tell me that you're going to do this, but people talk all the time.
Yeah.
And it's two-sided. Like, I think the biggest thing is, like, you said if someone offers 50,000, $500,000 or millions, you gotta move differently. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, you have, like, maybe, like, a Ed Sheeran that, like, looks like his normal self and can wear a hoodie and pull out his guitar and have the biggest songs in the world. But, like, it's not many people that are like Ed Sheeran that are international, like, truly, like, you can go from Poland to Philly,
Mhm.
and, like, sell out. Most people, you have to figure out, like, okay, you have to be a weekend when you have, like, eras and outfits and music videos and things like this.
Yeah.
So it's not even the fact of, like, okay, if I sign to this label, what can you do? My biggest thing is looking at ours and saying, what type of artist are you truly and who are you willing to be?
Mhm.
Like, my kind of favorite examples is, like, I've been following Doja Cat forever, like SoundCloud era. And, remember, like, she's like trying to make it work. And then Moo happened, like that viral clip. But then all of a sudden, the spotlight was on her. And then it was like, oh, this girl can do choreography. She can like do, a good photo shoot. She can do this. She can show that she can do pop well. She can show she can do R&B. She can show that she can be a rapper. We can all at this table name 50 people who've had like a little viral moment, but they didn't show in the next 6 weeks they can compete against the biggest pop artists of the time. And I think that's a big thing too. It's like if you're asking for this a dollar amount, can you really, really perform neck and neck with the top people? Because
Facts.
unfortunately, that's how the music industry works. There's someone right now that has a bubbling song on TikTok, and the thing is, okay, we expect you to be performed next to a Sexy Red, a Glorilla, or whatever, a Lotto, side by side, because it's limited spots. And I think that's the thing a lot of people kind of forget. Like, when it comes to like labels, they're only prioritizing so many albums a quarter. right? Yeah, they might put out a lot else, but actually prioritizing, playlists only have so many spots. If you're trying to get like a sync placement, like, okay, they're only going to use X number of songs that fit sound like that per season. Like it's only a set number of slots. So what are you showing that you're going to be that person and someone else is not the best fit for it? But
I feel
yeah,
like that boils down to like self though too. Like being aware of your situation, even though like it's like what I said, like everything that look good isn't always good for you. Like I know that if I had signed a deal like 2 years ago, realistically 2 years ago, I would be in not the best situation because I didn't know self. I didn't know like I didn't give myself time to grow. And even though like we took a distribution deal and stuff like that, it wasn't nothing that felt too out of my league. And I think it's okay to say like certain stuff is out of your league. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I think people are so stoked to be like in these upper echelons of folk, but don't
Republic
they
is talking to
realize,
me right now, and I'm like,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
great. I could tell you a lot of people got dropped from Republic in the last 2 years too. Like, what's the difference?
right,
Or putting out releases, they're not even shelved. It's just not performing. Like,
right. You're not giving yourself time to like grow as an artist, as a person, in your palette. Like the stuff I make now, like isn't anything like I made 2 years ago, not even a year ago. So it's just kind of like you give yourself more time to develop yourself, then you should feel more comfortable taking on these bigger things.
The when you just said that what you're making now is it's just different. You're going further or whatever that. What do you mean by that? Like, I'm curious. Does that involve you taking creative risks because you made the right choices before that? So it's almost like you also, what's another way of putting this? Like you almost don't overspend on yourself, right? Like it's almost like your living situation. Like there's another artist recently spoke to that was saying like, "Oh, I'm super conservative with how I live my life, but I know when to spoil myself
Right.
because I know when it's gonna give me like, oh man, I really want to do that because it's gonna make me happy. But everything else, I'm gonna be militant and disciplined about it. And then when there's an opportunity, I know to take it. That then he said that also helps me actually take creative risks
Yeah.
because it's almost like what you're saying, like that level of development that then I'm just curious if because that's one interesting that he mentioned to me, and I was like, yeah, I think like people could live like that even outside of the creative realm, right? Like it's like just living.
I do.
People don't talk about the mental part of artist development
Yes.
enough because
Yeah.
every label, it's just the artist development's become a buzzword. Every label gets on the phone and it's like literally what they're told to pitch. It's like, yeah, we do artist development. Look at our roster. We're
Mhm.
better than everybody else. This is why you should fuck with us. Like most of there are labels who do a really good job of development. Like everybody's like, like everybody's been making fun of, Leangelo Ball and shit because he can't perform and stuff like that. But Def Jam's also done a great job with like Friday, and Coco Jones and a lot of their R&B stuff too. Shout out to my guy Fame. He's been going crazy on the marketing. But like there's labels that really can do that in their skill set, and there's labels that can't. There's labels that are great with street rap. There's labels that can't do R&B. There's a big three that can't do R&B.
But that's going back to your Shark Tank thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It all
When
ties in, but I
when we
think
do
like
that.
so many artists aren't like the label can't develop an artist if the manager and the artist themselves aren't also like in that with them,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of artists that get signed and aren't actually ready to work. They think they're ready, but they're not ready.
Yeah.
They're not ready.
And I think that also too is like when there comes opportunities, like going back to like the select spots, right? Someone like Leangelo Ball can play at the All-Star Weekend.
Mhm.
There's all these different brands who are thinking like, okay, should we get him to perform at this private thing at Coachella, or should he perform at this brand thing? They're looking at this type of stuff.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes we kind of think about back to things like the artist, like, okay, if we saw him be, let's say, decent
Mhm.
at 2-3 performances, some other artist is like, you're never gonna call me decent again. You're gonna think I'm exceptional on the fourth one.
Yeah.
Another person's like, oh, I got slightly better, or I got backup dancers now. Someone else is gonna be like, no, I'm gonna do backflips and like, kind of like when like Offset like had his like Michael Jackson outfit and pulling out his pop lock and things like
And
that,
that's like
right?
Jordan Ward, like how he'll
Yeah.
sing and he'll like dance and all those stuff too.
And then people are like, oh, he used to be a dancer. I didn't see all this. But at the same time, that was a major stage he was performing on. And this is coming off of him. Like, I'm friends with his manager. I remember his manager reaching out to me in like 2000, I don't know, 20 or so, 21, being like, hey, I was looking at your personal playlist and I saw you like this artist named Jordan Ward. What you know about him? And then it was a couple of years of him developing. And then all of a sudden he like got buzz. And now, we're going to see what he does in the next couple of years. But at the same time, from my perspective, is a lot of people who are in two categories. So like, oh, I kind of heard the person's name, or, they have some streams, but like, there's an ecosystem that supports people who are kind of in this like, let's say 0 to 4 level of their career, right?
Right.
And then I think there's a lot of people who are in that like 4 to 6 level, which people in the industry are like, oh yeah, we know that name. And they might be jumping between distribution deals, or they're on one major label and then they leave and go to another major label. And then it's like that 7 to 8, which I feel like that's when the money is actually made. Those people who are playing the Lollapalooza, the Coachella and things like that. And I think it's important to know where you are in these kind of 3 different categories and realize, are you comfortable staying in these categories and you're going to make your money, long money that way? Or do you view yourself as something else and you're in the system? Do you think you in the upper echelon, but you really at a level 5?
Facts.
And like kind of figuring out how to move that. Because I'm personally think there's a lot of artists. We were talking about James Blake last time. I would put him kind of at the like, not in the level 8, 9, 10, but at the same time, extremely talented artists, can play a lot of festivals, can sell vinyls, can sell merch, can do all the things, but yet everyone can't hum his song. But at the same time, I think he's like the definition of a perfect example of like a middle class artist, right?
I'm happy you said that,
Yeah.
because the gap between the middle class and the upper class is there's a lot of middle class artists that are actually selling like the upper class artists are, but because of wherever they are, as far as if they're on an indie or if they're just doing a big distro deal, like, because we're talking about earlier as far as just like how the indies have risen like throughout the last year, and just like as far as like the Spotify data and whatever, like
Yeah.
I think, like I was saying this earlier because someone asked me today if they think if I think Honcho broke as an artist, and it made me think that I think the concept of breaking as an artist is actually like is like antiquated at this point, because Honcho is like obviously Honcho, huge artist in Atlanta, huge female fan base, definitely one of the hottest rappers out right now, but he doesn't, I don't know if he has one song everybody knows, but he's probably as close to breaking as you think, right? Like someone like Gunna, obviously, he's broken.
He's Gunna where Gunna was in 2017.
Yeah, like where I saw a video of a bunch of kids at a bar mitzvah dancing to "Fuck You Mean," like a bunch of 11-year-old Jewish kids with yarmulkes, and like that's broken. When you're at the bar mitzvah, you're broken.
When you're thinking, say, bar mitzvah, yeah, that's a new level of making it.
Like my favorite stat is that I've been talking about this for the last few weeks. Like BigXthaPlug, people don't realize how big an artist BigXthaPlug is. Like BigXthaPlug, if I went on Canal Street right now and interviewed tourists, what's your favorite BigXthaPlug song? They might not know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like obviously he has big records, like he's the largest, Texas, like all that. He has really big records, but BigXthaPlug, he sold 38,000 albums across catalog last week. 38,000. Like that, for anybody who's watching who doesn't like know what that translates as far as like dollar value, like add another 0 on the motherfucker. Like
and that's why I say that
he's
4 to
putting-
7
he's
range.
got toilet
You know what I
paper money.
mean? Like I
I'm
think
calling it toilet paper money.
that's the thing. It's like it's a lot of people who are
Funky
in that
funds.
in between phase. That once again, like I say, level 8, 9, 10. You can go out in Canal Street, you can go anywhere and say, these people, they've heard of them. But it's a lot of people who are kind of in between, but at the same time have like those massive, massive records. Like literally, he's playing Coachella. And the thing is, why is he playing Coachella and not someone else? It's because he has a record that an average leaned in hip hop fan probably knows at this point 2 songs now. You know what I mean? Like they might know 2 a.m. They might know Texas. He might have 2, 3 songs now. A lot of people don't have 2 or 3 songs that the average leaned in hip hop fan
And
knows.
here's the crazy stat. He sold 3,000 albums more than Gunna did last week. He sold, I actually looked this up. Like I even had to send the screenshots to someone earlier today. If you add up the catalog like per week, like literally the sales from all their streams, if you add up the sales of Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B, and Lotto, you get one BigXthaPlug.
And I mean, and
If
like
you add them up, you get one BigXthaPlug.
now album sales, I'm of the age where album sales actually meant something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm from the days that legit, like to buy an album, I literally had to go to a store to buy an album. And if it sold out that store, I have to go to another album. And if I didn't get it physically, that did not count as a sale. But that goes back to the point about like hits, right? BigXthaPlug has had a more of a better run the last 2 years than Gunna in terms of having 2 or 3, 4, 5 songs that are like consistently perform well in streaming versus Gunna is kind of the sense of like strong focus track, maybe another song here and there, but like you have like these kind of new Boss Man D-Lo type of artists is coming out having 4 or 5 songs that are performing at high numbers. Now you were talking about kind of the whole indie conversation, and I know like, you know, earlier we were saying some things we want to talk about today. And one was like the Spotify Loud and Clear report, right? And a big part of that factor that I want you to continue on about like indies, right? How are you seeing these indies function differently? I believe one of the stats was like 50% of kind of a lot of this revenue coming up is from these indies, and BigXthaPlug is on United Masters. That's a great example of someone that's performing really well, having these numbers, having these big looks, and it's not something that's considered an indie. What's your thoughts on this? Like, I'm just looking at these stats, but then also just as an artist manager.
I think like it makes you I think it changes what the definition of success is. It changes, I think, a lot of what the business model is too, as far as like another of my favorite artists personally, or maybe my favorite artist personally. He's number 1 on my Apple Music Wrapped every year, Larry June. He like, you know, obviously he's been on Empire this entire time. Babytron, big Empire artist. V's built his career on Empire. Babyface Ray built his career on Empire. Like stuff like that. You know, Empire has done such a great job of, you know, ever since they were doing Bang Gang and like the really like and Payroll Giovanni and like the really regional, like, you know,
They are the kings, whether it's from the Bay,
they got
Detroit.
Rio.
You're
Yup.
saying like I'll interject real quickly. I remember back in like 2016, 2017, talking to their team, and I literally was like, do you have like a project manager or someone based in Detroit? Just because people that you're naming right now, I was like, you have a slew of Detroit artists. No one else has this. And they're like, oh, yeah, we have yada, yada, yada. Unfortunately, I don't know his name. But like, it was like, I would definitely give him a shout out right now because the thing is like, they know how to lean in and not just sign anyone from these cities, but actually like the right bubbling artists at the right point, and then they stay. Like, yes, you have examples here and there when people might go to a major, but they find these artists early in their career who have this grassroots fan base, and they stay there. It's really, really unique.
But it's also to tie back to what you were saying earlier. It's like the right time, but also the right foot forward. Deal first comes across the table. It's like, oh, we're gonna start on good footing, and this is gonna take a lot less time and stress, right? I think that's one thing the music industry is not good at, right? And I think that goes back to, you said that earlier, right? Your history. Just to tie that back. One I was gonna quickly share stats from, so Loud and Clear, just for anyone that's listening, hopefully you know about what this is. It's the yearly report that Spotify releases, like what is happening amongst all the money that they pump out to the industry, how much goes to who, and it's in buckets, right? These 2 stats are really interesting. Speaking of independence, and what did you say? You said categories.
Yeah.
So this past year is what they just released, right? So in 2024, it was just a little over 71,000 artists out of the millions and millions and millions of artists earned at least $10,000 in royalties from streaming service. So just that number, you know, across the majority of how we know that it's in the millions, right?
Right.
We're talking about $10,000, more than 10,000 in a year. Going back to your other point of, so we're talking about streaming categories, to your point of categories of types of artists.
Yeah.
And that's up from 66,000 artists that were earning that much, or at least 10,000 in the previous year of 2023. To make that even a smaller pyramid at the top, it's 670 artists that earn more than 2 million. And
Superstars.
yeah, to your point of the categories, those top categories, that in the previous year it was 570. So at least that grew too. But if you think about it, how small those pieces are of a pyramid that they grew, and how the rest of the pyramid is getting really fucking big.
Yeah.
So just like to just
Yeah.
tangibly size that as we're all talking about it, it takes the conversation we talked about in the last couple episodes. Is, what do we have to do, knowing this, that there's obviously money there, and it's keeping the industry relatively healthy because there's still money going around, but you can't live off of that.
Mhm.
If you're, anywhere below the, what was that, 72,000 people.
Yeah.
Or artists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I think my benchmark is like gold records, right? Like every example, like I think as someone who's like worked in streaming and publishing, I think my like benchmark of viral, like I don't use the word viral lightly. I think it's been used a lot in the last
Yeah,
like
for
few
sure.
years. Like, oh, we went viral, and I'm just like,
No, you didn't.
right, for just
No,
but
you
like,
didn't, bro.
no, because my thing
I
is like,
Music Connect. You didn't go viral.
because my thing is like I consider viral like gold. Like
Mhm.
if you're on track to go gold, you're viral.
Mhm.
If not, like there's things that are before that I perceive in the sense of if you lean into your if you listen to your digital person, if you're assigned to a label, or if you listen to your manager who had some crazy idea that sounded crazy, but like, hey, it's something. You might have figured out something better along the ride. Maybe that could went to a gold record, right?
Mhm.
Before that, it's kind of like these are just stepping stones.
Mhm.
Like I don't even call it viral. It's like that's just great. You got some traction. That's what traction feels like.
Right.
Like that's what it feels like when you see if a song comes out and people decide to play it more than just the day it comes out, they actually want to listen to your song 6 weeks after it came out too.
Mhm.
Which all artists that we listen to, we don't listen to the day it came out. Besides like a couple examples of people we might troll,
Mhm.
right? But like back to your point, what do you all think about kind of this category? Like to me, when I hear stats like that, I know a lot of people might be up in arms talking about streaming services, but at the same time, the numbers going up. There's more people who are making revenue. It's telling me two things. If you're not in that upper echelon, figure out other ways to make money. If your money's not just going to come from streaming, or okay, what type of new strategies you're going to try to do so you can be in that category that you can get the $10,000.
Mm.
What do you all think?
I think it's about like mastering your niche. Like I feel like
Mhm.
especially rap, but I say music as a whole right now. It's like the Cheesecake Factory. Like you can order spring rolls and a steak and like get a fucking some chocolate ice cream if you want, and get a cocktail. Like you really could. Like you could really, if someone like went to me and was like, yo, I need an artist that looks like this, they're this old, they're from here, they're selling this much. I could probably find that, Like you could, there's really something for everybody.
Yeah.
Like Miles makes like intentionally bad music, and he's got fans. He actually can play shows. I think he's hilarious sometimes. Like there's really something for everybody. So I think like I think building that cult fan base and building that niche and mastering it is such an important part of it, especially in the indie game. And even if you're signed to a label, like figure out what it is, and then maybe you can be currency.
Mhm.
And if you're niche, back to the kind of two categories, right? If you're someone that can't make the $10,000 a year, if you have your niche, you can figure out how to still make your money speaking to that niche.
Yeah.
What festivals can you play that like really lean into your niche? Like Diplo is playing country music festivals.
Mhm.
Like he figured out how to like, be his niche. Someone else is saying, okay, like I want to be someone who makes that $10,000 off a stream every year. How do you lean into that niche so you can actually like make that revenue? Like we remember on Spotify when like anti-pop and Lauren was first popping up, and that was like first becoming that trend. There's some artists who are still playing huge venues to this day who said, oh, a niche is happening right now.
Mhm.
That's how you have a Claro. You know what I mean? That's how you have like all these different types of people. And there's a lot of other people who are on those same playlists, maybe in the number one spot, maybe with a playlist cover at one point, but they didn't figure out how to like get those numbers in the long run for a 2024, 2025 conversation. Maybe they might not know how to do it in 2019. But now in 2024, 2025, they didn't know how to still kind of own that niche.
Yeah, I think it's. I have a lot of talking points right now, but I think if I could boil it down to like 3 things, I think it's about artistic and business adaptability and being able to like flow. I think of like artists, for example. I think of like it's like SZA. Like I was hanging out with my friend Aaliyah literally like yesterday, and we were listening to SZA, and we was talking about how SOS is so different from Control, but then Control is so different from Z. And even though Lana is just a deluxe of SOS, you hear all these different influences that appeal to different genres. Like I personally like alternative. I like indie, a lot of shit. So a lot of songs I like lean more towards is songs that sound like that, like Scorsese. Like I'm gonna say this name all wrong, but Scorsese, Baby Daddy. That song is like one of my favorites on that, just because of like the production and just the vocal delivery, and all that stuff. While like someone may lean towards maybe like Crybaby, or like if you like Travis Scott, you may lean towards what's the song, Love Galore. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So it's kind of like people like, yeah, a lot of artists are growing and are able to get into these bigger fields and stuff like that, but that's because they go out their way to try stuff that isn't just like, oh well, I know I sound like this, I'm only going to stay like this.
That's the risk taking.
Yeah, you have
Right.
to be a risk taker, especially like if you don't care about, I don't want to say if you don't care about money, but if you don't care about money and you just find making the stuff that you're making, cool. If you want to grow, really grow, and make it into a point where it's like, yes, I'm doing what I love, but I'm getting paid to do what I love as well. You have to be like able to take a risk and just be like fuck it. Like I don't want to bring this back to myself, but like when I first started making music, my friends would get on my ass because they would be like, "Oh, you scared to make like add drums in your songs." So a lot of songs I would have would just be like guitar and bass and maybe like some atmospheric stuff. And then I had went to LA uh like in March, and I had worked with my homie Sega who's in Cruiser, and like first song I ever made with like 808 drums. And I was
That's
like,
tough. I
but
forgot
it
about
was
that
like
song.
it felt like me still being in the song, but still adding elements that I've always admired in other genres. Like, cause I really only hear that primarily in like rap and shit like that. But like hearing it blended with like the stuff that I like to like listen to, it felt like, oh yeah, like now I can produce a song with like drums. And I've been less scared to put drums into my music. And because I started doing that, a lot of people gravitate more towards it. Because like, you have good melody, but sometimes you want to hear a little sub bass, a little
Yeah.
knock, you know what I'm saying? Something hit you in your chest. So it's
You have your
like,
30 for 30. We get it.
you know what I'm saying? Type shit. So it's just like,
Would it have resonated with you if you had that session and you did that like 6 or 12 months before when you did that?
probably not, if I'm being honest. Just
Yeah.
because like when I was when I had made that song, I had already like had 80% of my last EP like done.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of it was like very atmospheric, maybe like a lot more elements included into it. But I was also in a headspace where I was open to being collaborative. Because when I made my first EP Circa, it was forced collaboration because I didn't know how to produce yet. So a lot of times I was working with what people could provide for me instead of what I wanted for myself. So when I started working on Impala, which is the second EP I made, I was like, I made it a known goal for myself. I'm going to produce, if not every song, I'll produce 90% of it, which I ended up doing. And I just had like other people come in to like add their own little elements. But, you know, I would not have leaned more towards doing like adding drums and stuff like that because I felt like the drums I wanted wasn't the drums that like I could A, do for myself, or
Mhm.
B, people were putting that I like enjoyed.
Yeah.
So Cause so being able to have someone that understood what I was trying to like convey and doing it like to the T, it made me feel more comfortable to try doing
It makes me
stuff.
think of two things, right? Like one example is like I worked at the label that has like that sound like that's Phoebe Bridgers and stuff like that, right? And like coming from working in hip hop a lot, I will be in a lot of spaces and I'm like, yeah, I work at a label as Phoebe Bridgers, and they'll be like blank face because they haven't heard of that person. Another side of the world, Phoebe Bridgers is the biggest pop star in the world in other spaces. And the fact that SZA, because someone who has a song with Phoebe Bridgers, and it makes sense, that speaks to an entire audience where
Mm.
Phoebe is a superstar, A-list superstar in their eyes. Now she also has hits with people like, Travis Scott and Kendrick Lamar, which speaks to a very different audience. And I think like that's a good example. Part two, your example about working with that producer reminds me of like Russ and like his story about being self-produced and then working with Boy ID for Best on Earth. And it reached a whole different audience and it became had a lot of hits. But that was his first hit at a certain level because as you're saying, not saying that someone like Russ isn't capable of making a song that slaps the same way, but he collaborated with the person that made that particular song, right? And I think that's a big thing about kind of collaboration, whether it's in the production side or with other artists. There's legit other audiences that, you have to think if you were going to continue to grow, like, okay, I'm not going to reach these people at all unless I really get out of like this bubble. And then also, sometimes you just can't do everything by yourself. And who are going to be the experts to make that happen?
Can I also say something too? And it goes back to your point of like clicking with someone on the music side. Manager side is so important. And I think it's also important to have that conversation of like, where do you see yourself as an artist, but where do you see yourself as a manager? Because you may like, okay, I'll use myself as an example. What if I was the type of artist that was like, I just want to be a middle class artist, but have upper echelon motion. You know what I'm saying? Like I can make my money. I can do these shows. I can go and work with whoever I want, but I'm out the way. I'm not in the limelight all the time. And what if you're with a manager? It's like, nah, we're aiming straight for the top. We're doing everything and everything like we're gonna do to get to this position. Things won't click because y'all won't see eye to eye. You want somebody that wants to be that you want a Drake when they're fine being like, I don't know.
It's your ambition. It's your creative DNA and that defines your ambition, right?
Right.
And there has to be some kind of, for lack of a better term, there has to be a marriage of that. And the thing is, it's like, I mean, we actually soon have to start doing outros and shout outs of the week, but I think it's interesting because the other thing to add to what you're all saying is like, there was a stat in the media report, the artist direct revenues, meaning all like independent distributors, that whole side, TuneCore, anyone that's doing like non-major and all that, it grew 4.7% this past year, but the year before it was 4.5% of growth. So a little bit of growth. The thing is, though, the number of independent artists grew 3.5 times as the revenues.
Wow.
So that means there's growth in it as a revenue being made by that demographic of people, but the amount of people in there is exponentially increasing. So it's interesting to tie in, own the niche, where you're talking about having a clear view of who you are in your long game, everything you were saying, right? Like it all comes together and saying, I'm going to worry less about competition if I'm focused on what it is that I want to do with my team. And I think that it goes back to the mental health thing, right? Like it's just having clarity of decisions and choice to be able to hit the category that you want to hit. And you never know, you might get into a category and then just go, oh shit, I forgot that I could tap dance, right? Like it's,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have to do that tomorrow. And
Yeah.
but like there's something to that. You said flow. That is like, and I think it was like 2 episodes or something, we were talking about careers and all this stuff. Like, honestly, flow is like probably, from my personal perspective, is the most important thing, to know how to keep as many things as you need flowing, keeping on top of everything, but at the same time know when something is not worth your time, or you and your team or your people that you're with or you're working with time. Because like, and now especially, right, there's so many people, there's so much music, you kind of, you have to let yourself get inspired to figure out, ooh, you know what, I could turn another corner creatively and also as a business.
Yeah.
To your points, like it's, and I think that's the whole reason of this podcast even existing, is like there's so much uncertainty, but at the same time there's so many amazing stories that legitimately are succeeding, you
Mhm.
know, amongst the chaos. But
Yeah.
anyways,
We covered a lot today.
yeah,
Yeah.
This is great.
I think we have like 3 more minutes. I don't know if there's anything else you guys wanna outro with, or I forget what the hell we usually do at the end. I don't know. A shout out to the week.
To say something chaotic, I think. Yeah. Normally. This has been like, I think, our least chaotic episode. So thank you.
I didn't get on my Benzino type timing today,
No.
man. I held back. I held not really, honestly.
No, you're just semi-canceled. It's okay.
no.
I semi.
I think if I'm a do my little shout out of the week, bro, I just want to say I'm hella grateful to like my team for real. Like it's really been like them, like my family and God that's kind of like helped me see a lot of growth in myself as an artist and as a person. And like I've struggled through like a lot of shit that I wouldn't like wish upon nobody for real. And even like through the good and the bad and stuff, these guys have always like had my back and always made sure like before even talking about business and man, they always just made sure like I was good. You know what I'm saying? There were times where I was like, yo, like I'm so fucked up. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to like cover rent. And I would ask for help and they just never batted out. It was like, yo, don't worry about it. Like you're good. And being able to see the growth in my career and the opportunities that are literally like right in front of my face and like the next step that we're going into, it feels good to be able to just be like, yo, like y'all starting to see the fruits of y'all labor. Like y'all like are my brothers. So I genuinely appreciate y'all and love y'all for real, bro. Y'all my family for real. So I really am grateful for y'all. And
Feel the same way, man. I appreciate you.
my dog.
I
man.
appreciate you. I think like the thing is like it really is it's a journey on both sides. You
Mhm.
know, like you just gotta. It's I'm grateful that you know Low.bō is cool with me being on his ass. You know, in a loving way. Pause, like I said in the quiet giant shit. I think like it's that's just important because like I feel like
That takes
it's
trust.
yeah, it's a balance of pushing someone, but you want to push them in the direction that they want to be pushed in, but also have them see the not see the light, but see also like just understand where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
You know, that's the most important thing I think for because I feel like there's so many times, and this is just like I guess in life itself. Like I remember my mom used to say like, you know, I would do like stupid shit in school or whatever, or just like not listen to her about certain stuff, and she'd be like, you know what, like someday you're gonna be like, you know what, maybe I was tripping back then, or maybe I like you're gonna understand
Right
someday.
quote.
You know, she really and that's kind of that's kind of how I feel with the management stuff too, where it's just like, you know, just trust me on this. Just give me the
Mhm.
benefit of doubt on this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just like trust me that in a few years, probably a good chance you'll feel a certain way. So I think like it's so important to find artists that are open to that, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's just important because you gotta build a relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, the theme, my just quick, I guess, shout out for the week is I had an interesting call today. I met someone in the industry that I haven't met before, and my initial vibe was this person's an asshole. So there's a lot. I think one thing I just want to say there's a lot of assholes out there,
Facts.
but I think good people make for good living. I think that's what like just this conversation, right? Like even just meeting you both today and just like the dynamic between you two, like yeah, more people have to see these stories and see where you guys go and what you do. Because in the end, no matter what happens in the journey, right, you're close with each other, you believe in each other. No matter what happens,
Mm-hmm.
you nail something,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just yeah,
I will
it's
say
good people.
one thing actually going back to the independence thing. I actually had one. I actually
Yeah.
do have a final thought now that I think
Mhm.
about it, because I was happy you brought up Russ as far as with the independence stuff because Russ did such a good job of promoting independence on his own as far as going on podcasts talking about it, as far as just like talking about his journey, and obviously he's done. I don't like listen to Russ's music, but you can't dispute that he's done a great job of building himself as an independent artist. But the labels took that and we're like, okay, let's sell the independence. Now let's sell the concept of independence
Mhm.
to artists.
Mhm.
So now we can put them on a little like 30K 20 song distro deal with the upstream, and we can just take as many shots and not have to invest directly into all these artists at the same time, because we don't know what's going to blow up either. We can try to develop artists, we can try to put our resources in, but it's, there's some of this shit that's just, kind of like a hand of God. Like there's definitely an element with some of this shit, and I think a lot of labels flipped they took what Russ and what people were saying about independence and just flipped it and said, yeah, you be independent on our distro company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my ending note is like, I just hope people like really see the value of like people who want to help you before like the contract is signed or before a title. Because I think a lot of the times when people believe, especially in terms of musicians, like a little alley-oop, like, hey, we need someone to do this showcase. We need someone to speak on this panels. We need someone for this event, whatever it might be. There's so many of those opportunities. And I think most of the time, a lot of people love to kind of put in names because we want artists to win. And I just like hope like both sides of the table, not this table, but like, the proverbial table, like just like acknowledge the value of that. And especially creators, remember, like, ask those questions. If you get an opportunity and say, oh my God, thank you for reaching out to me. How did you hear about me? Oh, my friend did. Oh, who was that friend? Can I get in touch with that friend? I want to thank them personally and like try to actually like build a relationship with those people and ask those type of questions so more doors can open. But then also, if you all didn't work together, you still would have been his advocate. And like, remember that even if you're not on someone's team, that still has a lot of value too. And like, remember that too. So that's kind of my like note. I think it's so many behind the scenes plays. And I feel like no one really talks about those enough. And I'm glad that was like part of your story because, a lot of people's stories begin that way, but people don't talk about it enough. So thank you for that.
I have one last thought and then I'm going to end it.
Yeah.
I think before business, before all the like opportunities, before the career stuff, you have to be likable as a person. I feel like a lot of the opportunities that have come either from like my side or Julian's side or Mike's side is really just because like people like us as people. Like a lot of times you like you can't get any further than just being yourself. If you could just be yourself, whoever's for you will be for you. Whoever's not won't. So I think at the end of the day, it all just boils down to be a likable person. You don't have to be everybody's friend, but just be a likable person. Because being likable will sure as hell open a lot of opportunities than being talented.
Hey, that's a great way to end it.
Yeah. Thank you for listening, everyone.